Hello there, Isaac here. After the overwhelming popularity of What If Izuku Was a Ghoul, I've decided to go ahead and make the next part. And honestly, guys, I thank you for all the views and support. It makes me really happy to see people liking a story I personally loved so much. Now, in the last part, we left off with Izuku seeing his Kagane and Kakugan within his reflection after the incident. If you didn't watch or finish the last part, I strongly advise you go do that. Without further ado, sit back and relax as we start this story. What If Izuku Was a Ghoul Part 2? The story starts now. It had been several hours since Izuku had first collapsed on the floor, crying profusely. Seeing his wings had only amplified his crippling sadness, but he realized he needed to move, to leave this place. All that was left for him at home was pain. The child picked himself up off the floor, looking towards his reflection in the mirror and seeing that his quirk had deactivated. He would walk into his room and begin to pack some clothes and other miscellaneous things into a small backpack, the one he once used in preschool. Izuku put a few bottled waters into his backpack as well, along with his All Might onesie. This made him do a double take. Did he really want to bring that with him? He wasn't a hero anymore. He couldn't be like All Might now. As hard as it was to accept, Izuku was a criminal now. A villain. This resulted in Izuku throwing his All Might onesie out and leaving behind the All Might figurine he had loved oh so much. Taking them would only remind him of eating his... Izuku would begin to tear up again, but would stop himself, trying to be strong and keep moving. Out of habit, Izuku went to the fridge, but stopped as he realized any food in there would be useless to him. The child walked into the foyer, looking back into the apartment he had lived in for the past 6 years. He didn't want to say goodbye, but he couldn't stay. Maybe he deserved to be put in jail with all the other criminals, but he was scared. He didn't want to be in trouble anymore, and that meant leaving this house, leaving everything behind. Even if the outside world was scary, it wasn't as scary as being put in jail.
Goodbye, house. Goodbye, Mom.
Izuku would say, his eyes beginning to tear up once more. He walked for hours, avoiding the area where his mother had died. Sirens sounded off only an hour or two after he originally left the house. Surely it was for her. Once the sun had risen, people started to come out of their homes in droves, all walking into the city for their jobs. Despite Izuku having bloodstains all over his shirt, a detail he had overlooked, the child was largely ignored by everyone. Anyone who did notice him would simply keep walking, hoping a hero or police officer would take care of the situation, not even sparing a minute to phone an agency or the local authorities. Izuku would eventually make it to the city, closest to his little town, and the scents were overpowering. While he wasn't hungry, people still smelled good, and in the city there were more people than Izuku could even fathom. Men, women, teenagers, even children his age, all walking to their jobs or to school, and all smelling like a full-course meal. Luckily, Izuku could control himself, and would duck into a nearby alleyway. The child curled up in a fetal position, doing his best to quell the thoughts running throughout his mind. Why was he thinking about all these people as just food? These were regular people, just like him, just like Kachan, like his mom. Izuku would begin to tear up once more, and this time he couldn't stop them from flowing. He missed his mother, his home. He wished he could just reverse time and go back a couple days, maybe even a couple years. Why did he have to eat his mother? Why did he have to bite Kachan? Why couldn't he just be the normal child his mother had always wanted? Tears would fall like rain for the next few minutes, up until a kind voice pierced the dark clouds. "Yo, kid! I haven't seen you around here before!" Before an admittedly less kind voice spoke. "Don't talk to strangers, Baka!" Izuku looked up to see a man staring down at him, wearing a paper bag and dressed with torn pants and a stained red flannel shirt. The The ghoul, seeing this rather strange stranger in front of him, was unable to think of anything to say. Part of him was scared, thinking this person was some sort of criminal, but his funny voice and posture made this encounter seem kinda silly. Honestly though, what was Izuku supposed to say to this? Was it even safe to be around this man, since Izuku might end up eating him? "Come on, kid, say something at least! Or just stay quiet, little brat," the man said, twisting and shoving a finger in Izuku's face. The sudden movement would scare Deku, who, almost instinctively, would go to bite down on the stranger's finger. Luckily for both parties, the man quickly pulled his finger back, barely saving the appendage. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Why would you... Ah!" The sound of metal clanging would sound out as the man backed up into, and tripped over, several conveniently placed trash cans. Izuku couldn't help but laugh as he saw the man sitting in the trash with a banana peel sitting atop his paper bag.
Mister, you have a...
Izuku would stop as he could practically see the fumes rising from the paper bag. The man would pop up and shake his fist at the child before him, though not yelling in an angry way, more like a playful but sort of annoyed way. "Hey, don't laugh at adults! That's not exactly nice, you know, kid?" But bananas are pretty funny. This only made Izuku laugh harder this time. How could he possibly take this guy seriously? Especially with a paper bag over his head? This prompted the man to begin to laugh as well, falling back into the trash as he did so. The two would laugh for a few more seconds, both unaware of just how much the other needed joy like this. Before Izuku could ask the man anything else though, his phone would begin to go off. "Oh, crap, crap, crap! It's him! I'm sorry, kid, I have to go. Have fun with the trash. Or maybe clean up a bit, it kinda smells." And like that, the man was running out of the alleyway. Izuku would reach out to him, but quickly put his hand down. No, he couldn't have friends anymore. He'd just bite them, like he did with Kachan. Izuku would spend the rest of the day curled up within the alley, the events of the previous night replaying in his head over and over, despite him trying to forget. As night fell, Izuku saw suspicious-looking people come out of the woodwork. There were a pair of men sitting in an adjacent alleyway, hanging outside a local bar. The two spent most of the night trying to pick up women who all passed them up. The two were both relatively tall but pretty lanky. One had a beanie on, but had long, light blue hair underneath, with the other wearing a gray and black hoodie. Izuku watched on, seeing them talk and laugh between conversations with girls, wishing he had some friends to talk to, or something else of the sort. Things didn't stay peaceful for long though, and this became apparent when Beanie would yell out in frustration. He had failed to impress yet another woman, though this time he was going to do something about it. Without warning, the man used his quirk, one which allowed him to stretch his fingers, using them to wrap around the woman and capture her. Luckily for the woman, she had some sort of shield or barrier quirk, which immediately activated. Her barrier was still wrapped by the man's fingers, but she wasn't in any immediate danger. For now, that was. The woman would scream for help, though it was greatly muffled through her barrier, and the few people who looked over at her would just keep walking away. The man would shake the woman in her barrier, trying to get her to put it down, with his friend sighing and attempting to stop the guy. "Come on, dude. This isn't how you pick up girls. This is a little too literal," Hoodie said. "Oh wow, like you haven't done this before, man?" Beanie retorted, still shaking the poor girl in her barrier. Izuku kept watching on, knowing he should probably do something about this. But what could he do? He was just a kid, and couldn't even use his quirk. At least not properly. "Hey guys, I think you're supposed to ask before you touch. She is pretty hot though." Izuku turned his head so quickly it almost gave him whiplash. There, running towards Beanie and Hoodie, was the man with a paper bag. Beanie would scowl at the man, holding the girl in one hand and using his other to stretch his fingers out towards the interloper. Hoodie would simply pull on the drawstrings of his jacket and start walking off, not wanting any part of this. Bag would dodge all 4 of the fingers flung at him, doing a couple flips in the air while holding his paper bag, landing directly in front of his attacker. Bag would go to uppercut Beanie, only to unfurl his fists and shove his fingers up the man's nose. Using only his fingers, Bag would drive the man backwards into an alleyway, Izuku only able to hear the sound of metal clanging. A few short seconds later, Bag would walk out of the alley, dusting off his shoulders and standing triumphant. "Don't worry, pretty woman, I just took out the trash. Literally, haha," Bag said, only for him to look over and see the woman had quickly run off. His eyes would practically bug out of the bag. "What? I just went through all of that for nothing? She was so pretty." Izuku would find himself giggling a little bit. This guy was awesome. He was really funny, but had also saved that girl. Was he some kind of hero? Maybe he only did hero work at night or something. Either way, he was really cool. Izuku would stand up to go talk to Bag, only to see a few fingers shoot out from behind the man. Luckily, Bag was able to dodge the attack, but his bag had been pierced, exposing the left side of his face. He had blonde hair and a seriously nasty scar going down the middle of his forehead. While Izuku was expecting Bag to get back up and fight, quite the opposite happened. Bag would fall to his knees, putting a hand over his exposed face. No, this isn't good. I'm gonna split." "No, you're not. I need to wrap it up or I'll tear apart. Just calm down." Beanie, now covered in trash, would walk out of the alleyway, smirking as his knuckles cracked. "Ha! You thought you could just shove me into a dumpster and I'd go out like that? You're barking up the wrong tree, man." Beanie would stretch out his fingers again, using them like a whip to smack Bag away, him flying into a nearby building. Izuku looked around, hoping there was someone who'd help Bag out, or were at least calling the cops or heroes. The only people he saw, though, were running away from the commotion, or recording the event. Izuku looked back to the fight and saw Bag still on his knees, holding the exposed part of his face. Was he unable to fight now? Was there something wrong with him? Was nobody going to help him? What was wrong with all these people? "Oh, come on, man. You were all hot shit before I tore that bag. Get up and fight me. We gotta make this quick before the heroes get here," Beanie said, his fingers still outstretched and ready to attack. Bag would simply stay on his knees though, frantically muttering to himself. Beanie's smirk would turn into a grimace before he elongated his fingers to attack once more. "Fine, I guess you're just a tease too, man. I'll finish you off right now." Beanie would pull his fingers back, then suddenly launch them out towards Bag, using them like spears to skewer the man. The only problem was, someone had jumped between the two. That person being the very small, foolish, or brave, Izuku Midoriya. Without thinking, the ghoul had rushed forward to shield Bag, tanking 3 of the 4 fingers, with the 4th being lodged into Bag's shoulder. Izuku looked down, seeing a finger in his stomach, waist, and one piercing his upheld forearm, and then shoulder behind it. It didn't hurt like he thought it would. In fact, it hardly hurt at all, at first. "What the hell? Where'd you come from, man? Damn it, people are gonna care if I kill a kid. You better not die on me!" Beanie yelled out as he retracted his fingers, only to use them as a whip again to smack Izuku out of the way. The child's deed didn't go unnoticed though, and seeing a kid hit did smack Bag out of his psychotic trance. Izuku had landed on the nearby sidewalk, his head hitting the hard pavement, with a loud cracking sound ringing throughout his thoughts. But unlike most children, Izuku's wounds healed quickly, and he soon got back up, despite his thoughts still being a little cloudy. The child looked over to see Bag and Beanie wrestling, with the two being pretty even. Despite his wound, Bag had been able to grab his enemy by the wrists, meaning his quirk was pretty useless at the moment. The two kept trying to push the other off, or onto the ground. Izuku had rubbed the spots he had been stabbed at, but already knew they were gone. This man had hurt him, and not only that, he was trying to kill the first person to be nice to him since Mother. Without realizing it, Izuku had activated his quirk, his eyes turning black and his wings sprouting out in an oddly beautiful display. The little angel would begin walking towards the two fighting adults. Not noticing Izuku, the two continued fighting. Beanie, using a slightly underhanded tactic, would stretch out his fingers and push it back into Bag's shoulder wound, causing the man to scream out in pain, but he didn't let go. This would give Beanie a chance to push Bag back, though, putting a foot behind the man and causing him to fall onto the ground. Heh, you fell right on your ass like a chump. Now get ready to die, man. Beanie would yell out, getting ready to stab Bag once more, who cowered on the ground, closing his eyes and waiting to be killed. No, come on, I was just playing around. Do it, you won't, weakling. Nothing came though, with Beanie very confused as to why his fingers hadn't elongated. He would then look down, finally noticing the hand he was now missing. What the what? What the hell did you do, you damn trash bag? Beanie would yell out, preparing to use his other hand.
It was me. Get away from him, you big bully.
Izuku yelled out, his wings now looking a little shorter than before. Both Beanie and Bag would turn to see Izuku, with Beanie grimacing and pointing his remaining hand at the child. Bag simply looked surprised, but almost as if he were happy to see the kid. Well, for a split second at least, before a look of worry crossed over his face. No, kid, stay away, he'll kill you. Shut up, you, Beanie would say to Bag before looking back to Izuku. You stay away or else. And what'd you do to my hand? You better know how to fix that, man. I need that thing. Izuku kept walking forward, watching the man getting more and more panicked. But Izuku wasn't scared. He just wanted to hurt this guy, and the only way he knew how was to bite him. Was he a bad person for wanting to hurt him? Or was he good for wanting to help Bag and that girl earlier? Hey, stay back! I swear I'll kill you if you get any closer, man! Maybe he was a bad person. Izuku wondered if Bag thought he was a bad person now, after he hurt that man. Maybe Bag wouldn't want to be friends now. Maybe he didn't deserve any friends anymore. Probably just end up hurting them anyways. Izuku didn't want to be lonely though. He didn't want to be sad anymore. Didn't want to see people get hurt or get hurt himself. That's it, man! I warned you! Beanie yelled out, shooting his fingers at Izuku. Bag would lunge forward to tackle the man, but it was too late. His fingers had lodged themselves into the child's body. No! What did you do? You killed the cool kid! Bag yelled, his one exposed eye looking as if he was ready to cry for some reason. Izuku simply looked down at the fingers piercing his chest and stomach. This time they hurt. There was a stinging sensation, and he hated it. Without thinking, just like last time, Izuku's wings would shoot out thin, spike-like blades, this time only severing the fingers inside of him. All Izuku had thought was he wanted to get rid of them, and his quirk, or his wings, did just that. This time, Beanie screamed out as his fingers were severed, having them retract back towards him, their length being about half of what it'd be normally. Damn it, man! What'd you do? I'm ruined now! I can't even use my quirk anymore! Izuku ignored the man, though, and went to work pulling out the fingers still lodged inside of himself. It was hard work and hurt like hell, but it soon healed. Though all of this healing had taken a bit out of him, he was getting a little peckish. Without a second thought, Izuku had lunged forward, quickly covering the distance between him and Beanie, tackling the man to the ground and taking a chunk out of his shoulder. The man would scream and kick Izuku off of him before getting up and running away, too much of a coward to even swear vengeance. Bag was simply surprised and didn't bother to chase down Beanie or even move from his spot. The Ghoul would soon realize what he had done and hated it. Not only had he severely hurt that man, he had also showed his true nature to Bag, the only person who had been kind to him as of late. Now Bag knew that he was really a bad guy. He'd be all alone just like before. Izuku would fall to his knees and begin to cry. He didn't want to be here anymore. Didn't want to fight anyone again. He wanted to go home. Wanted his mommy. Wanted to be a normal kid again. To just be called her little angel once more. Bag would quickly pull out a bandana from his pocket and wrap up the exposed side of his face before approaching the child. Hey little guy, are you okay? Don't worry, big bad beanie finger man's gone, Bag said as he squatted down next to the child. He wasn't especially good with children and had no idea what to do or say to get a kid to stop crying. Izuku continued to sob, not caring about anything or anyone around himself. He liked Bag, but he didn't want to laugh right now. He just wanted to let everything out and cry for his mother. Okay then. There. Let it all out, kid. It's okay. It's okay. You know, you're really awesome for saving me, kid. Izuku continued crying, making Bag feel a bit awkward. After a few more seconds of awkwardness, he just blurted something out. You know, you're pretty brave out there, and your wings are super cool. It's almost like you're my little guardian angel or something, you know? Or demon, really, but who's keeping track? This was enough to finally break Izuku out of his crying spell. The Ghoul would look up at Bag, wiping the tears from his eyes.
Wait, what'd you say?
Huh? Ignore the demon thing. I just said you're like my guardian angel or something. Hey, don't ignore me! Izuku, without even thinking, would suddenly lunge forward and hug Bag tightly. He knew this guy would never replace his mother, but it was better than nothing, and he was way nicer than anyone Izuku had met that day. Even better than his friends he had made years ago, like Kacchan. Whoa, kid, what are you doing? Bag would say, his body tensing up for a second before slowly relaxing and patting Izuku on the head. It'd be a few seconds before either of them talked. Hey kid, I completely forgot. What's your name? Izuku would pull away from Bag, wiping his damp eyes a little and looking up at the man. Izuku would stop to think for a second. He couldn't use his real name since it was possible this guy was some sort of hero. But what would he be called? His mother always called him Izuku, and it's not like he had any friends that called him... Wait, that's it. Kacchan would always call him Deku, which meant he was useless. Well, it was a good fake name, and really, it was true for most of his life. He had usually just been useless, just a burden to his mother.
You can call me Deku. What's your name, mister?
Bag would give Izuku a slight sideways glance at the name, before proceeding to point at himself. Well, my name's Jin, but if you want, you can call me Twice. Pretty cool name, huh? Twice would then remember the position they were in, and the fact that they had just been in a fight. He'd quickly look over Deku, though all the wounds had completely healed. This dude was so cool. He'd then notice a couple heroes making their way towards the scene, and quickly grab the kid's hand. No time to explain, but we gotta go, kid. The two would rush into a nearby alley, appearing out the other side and dashing through a couple restaurants in order to avoid detection. Finally, after a good 10 minutes of running, Twice would walk into a motel and rent a room. The clerk did give Twice an odd look, especially since he had a child with what looked like dried blood all over his shirt, not to mention the man with the bag, but in the end said nothing and let them go up to their room. Once there, Twice would finally relax, noticing Deku had followed him without any questions or anything, though he did have an inquisitive look on his face. Twice would ask about it, only for the kid to ask if he was a villain, and this started a long conversation about how Twice was indeed a villain, but he was still a good guy. And this led to Twice discovering just how smart Deku was, which did make him a little scared that he'd find the comics in his regular hideout. Either way, the two would talk for a bit, with Twice asking if Deku was alone. He was, so where were his parents? Oh, just like with Twice, they were dead too. Even though he had just met this kid, he felt for him. The villain had lost his parents at a young age, just not this young. He couldn't imagine how hard that must be, and judging by how the kid wouldn't talk about his mother, that must have been pretty recent. Twice would sit back in his chair, guessing the kid didn't have any place to stay, just like when he was younger. They were so similar, and he knew how it felt to have nothing, just like this kid. He wouldn't let that happen to Deku though. He'd keep him from being lonely. They'd be the family neither of them had left, though there was the topic of how Deku bit and ate part of that dude. Twice would have to ask about that later though. Hey kid, if you're fine with it, you can stay with me. I know I'm a bit of a weirdo that talks to himself, but I think we could be great friends. Izuku would nod slowly, hesitant about what the future held. It was scary, and this person was still a stranger. But what choice did he really have? This was his life now, one filled with strange and dangerous people. He was a villain, and who better to stay with than another villain? At least Twice was nice, and fun to be around most of the time.
Sure, but there is something I should probably tell you about first.
A couple miles away, in the back of a dark, dusty garage, Beanie and Hoodie were talking. Damn it, man! What am I supposed to do about these nubs? I can barely stretch out the fingers on my right hand. That little shit, he made me a cripple! Beanie yelled out, stretching his remaining nubs out a few inches, wincing in pain due to his wounds still being fresh. And that's why I walked away. You never know what type of people you'll be fighting. It's a miracle that little ankle biter didn't kill you. Kids can be monsters. Hoodie said, playing with his drawstrings. Come on, man. You gotta help me kill this kid. A good friend would be fuming, jumping at the chance to avenge me. You got a way stronger quirk. You could easily kill that kid. Hoodie would sigh, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. Come on. It'd be such an inconvenience to kill a kid. But I'll take care of him, only if you introduce me to this dude who sells Trigger. I have some business I must attend to in China first. Think you can wait a bit? Fine, man. Take all the time you want, as long as you can promise you'll help me kill that kid, Beanie said, spitting on the ground and cursing Deku. Don't worry. The tower always delivers on its promises.